Weatherbell Analytics meteorologist Joe Bastardi, your Saturday Summary. Here's your initial 500 millibar, and you can see the red going on here in eastern United States and across Western Europe. It's very, very warm, and we got a trough that's cutting through here. It's going to cool it down for a couple of days, but there's no cold air available yet. All right, so these troughs come through, and what happens is your daytime highs are near normal, and your nighttime lows hardly go down at all. And there are flurries and squalls in the back of it. There's going to be some snow in the ski country of New England. But now I want you to keep an eye on what's going on over here. See, we get a trough, ridge over trough couplet developing near Hawaii or out in the eastern Pacific. And that is crucial because when we go out here, this trough near Hawaii like this means that these features are going to come rolling strongly southeast into the United States with Arctic air. So this is still, we are at day 6 here. It's still a mild pattern overall. And part of the reason it's mild is look at all the low pressure that's across Canada. So if you have low pressure like this, then that drainage of air is coming in from the Pacific, and that air may be cool when it gets to the west coast, but goes up over the Rockies, dries out, and warms up essentially. So you need high pressure all through Western Canada to deliver the goods as far as cold air goes. Now we get out here to day 9, and this is getting real interesting because if we look at the old weeklies here, they look like this, and you notice that there's less trough here and more trough in the Central Plains. And this thing is going to come caving in to the Mississippi Valley, Ohio Valley, with a major winter outbreak of Arctic air and perhaps plenty of snow to boot from Texas on up to New England. Let's see, the middle of next week it is. So watch what happens here. The surface pattern changes dramatically. The low pressure in the means is off to the east. The highs are in the west. The net drainage of air is coming from the north. You guys know how cold it is in Alaska now. Everybody tells you when it's warm in Alaska. Nobody tells you when it's real cold. It's just absolutely brutal up there. The new 288, this is day 12. This doesn't make a whole heck of a lot of sense to me because you've got this trough still east of Hawaii. So there's going to be more trough in here. And it will have to correct. And you can see it correcting. If we look a couple of days ago, it looked like this. See, there's more ridge here, and it had more trough here. So the model has problems. It tries to make too much trough in the west. So if there's X amount of energy in this box, if it's figuring too much here, it doesn't understand there's going to be more off to the east. Now, once we get out to day 15, this gets interesting because this ridge over Alaska is going to be pouring all sorts of cold air into the western and central part of the United States. This tries to resist along the eastern seaboard. Again, this looks like it should correct to me, all right, that there should be more trough up in here. But in the meantime, even this pattern, when you put positives over Alaska, it forces the cold air to try to push. And the question is how much. So it's going to turn much colder down the road here once we get a little bit past the new year. It may try to back off, but you look at this pattern, and most of the winters where there's a warm pool right over here, the ridge of high pressure gets in here and delivers cold air. Now, one thing I'm looking at very closely, this is what you can see the change from what the weeklies had a couple of days ago. Look, see how it's further back over here. So it's trying to correct east. What I'm looking at very closely though is an analog. One of my friends, the guy's a weather guru. He just lives up in Garrett County, Maryland. If you live in Garrett County, Maryland, you have to be a weather guru. January 1937. And he said, hey, Joe, what about this? This had a warm pool in the Northeast Pacific. And what happened with this winter, the trough went into the west in January, and it was frigid west of a line from Lake Superior to El Paso. It boiled away over the southeast part of the United States. And some of the modeling is trying to go to that example. That is the warmest of the examples. I had not looked at that before, all right? But the way I am, if I know someone that loves the weather, has passion, he emails me, boy, I'm on top of it. I'm like a dog. Just throw me the bone. I'll go look. But watch what happened. February and March turned into the classic winter pattern. And if you notice in our Weatherbell preseason forecast, we said look out for the false flag of cold. November, December would be an uneventful month. It would warm up. And then January, February, March would be the winter. And I think the later it starts, the later it's going to last, given this. And there is a lot of potential on the table. A lot of potential. The other thing that got me was the hurricane season. This is the 2019 hurricane season. And remember, we said there wasn't going to be much action in there, right? And you can see where the tracks are. Look what happened in 36. Same thing. Same thing, including a hurricane hit near Hatteras in 36, just like we had this year. So, and I'm one of these guys that believe that there are these long-term signals in the tropics that they're sort of like in the background that do influence the weather. So that this has me looking and saying, okay, well, you got to be careful here. And when we look at what's going on with some other things going on with the MJO, I'll get to that in just a moment here. First of all, there's the warm pool in the Northeast Pacific. There is what I consider the Modoki ENSO weak. ENSO 3.4 and 4 are above normal, cool off to the east. That's a cold signal. That is a cold signal. What is it for the United States? These three things there are cold. This right here, though, starts making you wonder about the. See, this kills convection in the eastern Indian Ocean, but allows it to expand over here and further east, which is a warm phase of the MJO normally. In other words, if the Madden-Julian oscillation gets into 3, 4, 5, 6, it warms up across the United States normally. All right. So here's another thing. You know, Weatherbell is Weatherbell. We're not Climate Bell, but I have to. They're like cousins. They're not brothers or sisters, but they're like cousins, right? You can't have one without the other, and they're in the same family. And it's already starting. It's warm. It's 66 in D.C. today. Chicago record warmth, right? You know, in mid-January 2010, it was a Thursday afternoon. I think it was the 18th. I called up Joe DeLeo. We weren't working together at the time, but I was convinced the weather pattern was going to go crazy. And you know, in the meantime, you know, I'm reading blogs and people email me and say you're nuts and all this stuff. And the reason why I'm saying that is this is what was going on January, I guess is 9th through the 20th. I don't know the exact dates, mid-January. It's just warm all over. It looks like now, right? Look what happened. Here comes Snowmageddon, right? From January 25th to March 5th, right? Right in front of it. Right in front of it, look what happened, right? Now, this is 1967. This is the last 2 weeks of January 67. By the way, Chicago had one of their biggest snowstorms on record in the middle of this period. All right, but look at this. All warm across the United States, la-di-da. We had record warmth in Atlantic City. I think it was 3 days in a row. Our thermometer where I lived in Summers Point hit 70 degrees. I could not believe it. I thought I was living in Texas again. But look what happened first 20 days of February. And we actually had where I lived in Atlantic City, had the snowiest 12 days on record, 30 inches of snow in 12 days, right, during that. The coup de grace was 66. Look at this, okay? This is December 20th to January 10th, 1966, right? Here's the following, the following 30 days. You know what? You would look at this kind of warmth and say, oh my gosh, what's coming? And yet you see people blaming climate change because it's warm right now. If it gets cold, they'll blame climate change for that too. And yet this is, I could keep you here for hours, but you got to go watch football. Or if you watch football, you got to go do something else, right? Showing you example after example after example. And all this does is display ignorance of the past. That's one thing. It displays, if you do know this stuff is going on and you still do it, I don't know what you call that. I call it deceitful. And the arrogance to think that the future is assured. You know, I have a forecast out, you know, but I'm showing you the direct challenge to my forecast, which is that 1936, right? 1936-37 example. So I'm cognizant of that. I expose it. I say, listen, I have a doubt about this, blah, 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 blah. That's called skepticism. It's not called denial. This is amazing. So let me ask you this question. Given what you've seen, here's the last 10 days. Here's the upcoming 7 days. If the climate forecast system model, the latest run, all right, varies back and forth, winds up like this from January 10th to February 9th, would that surprise you? Would you be shocked? Would you think that that's a sign of climate change or just simply what has happened before happening again, right? Now, here's that MJO. Okay, this is the US generated model, which rotates it in 8 and 1, but then starts getting it over to 5 and 6 again. See, it's nice and warm now. See, we're in 6, right? Right? That's a warm phase of the MJO, right? But there's some, and this is the European is gasp. It's interesting in that the European 500 millibar pattern is a little bit more bullish than its MJO. Something's kind of crazy. Now look at this, a Japanese model, which is kind of bullish for coal. CFSV2 does a big rotation right through all the coal phases here. So that's interesting there too. But let me show you something that's really weird about these things. 1978, for those of you who are alive or remember that, what a vicious winter. And the worst part of it, there were 4 major snowstorms while this was rotating through warm phases right over here. Unbelievable. And then the blizzard of 78 hit right over here in New England. But remember, you had the 3 major storms in the east, then the Ohio Valley blizzard, all in the warm phase. And that's not chopped liver there. That's a huge, huge amplification. Now this is let's see, this is 2010, just before Snowmageddon, bang, into the warm phases, right? Snowmageddon started around the 23rd or 24th. That was the first storm in D.C. But these are warm phases over here it went into. And 2015, I remind people all the time, the coldest February on record in many places in the Northeast is February and March, unbelievable. We went to Rhode Island Easter that year, and Situate Reservoir was still encased in ice. Of course, Easter was April 4th, but I had never heard of it being encased in ice that late. But in any case, we see some exceptions to the rule. So there's plenty of doubt, plenty of reason to, hang on and look. And even though it's nice and mild now, if it turns wild, no one should be surprised. And it's not a climate emergency. I'll tell you what's an emergency to me, the fact that there's no weather going on. It's like, I'm bored, all right? It's never boring, I'm only kidding. Enjoy the weather, it's the only weather you got.